Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. CDB and World Bank agree to closer collaboration. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Monday, 13th February 2023. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Multi-Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. The Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, and the World Bank charted a path for closer collaboration to drive the Caribbean's development agenda during a joint working session held on February 2nd and 3rd in Kingston, Jamaica. SKN Newsline's Andre Huey fills us in.
According to a press release from the Development Bank, multi-sectoral teams from the institutions examine avenues for deeper cooperation to enhance development outcomes for Caribbean countries. The areas reviewed included sustainable development, infrastructure, energy, human development, private sector engagement, and regional cooperation. The discussions, the release said, covered areas of current focus, active projects, and initiatives, as well as lessons learned and the best practices. The two-day session concluded with agreements on next steps to adequately meet the development needs of Caribbean countries. Identified areas of emphasis include tourism, renewable energy, digitization, capacity building, and education. Ms. Lilia Brunsich, World Bank's country director for the Caribbean, said, "Having solidified links between the CDB and World Bank teams, I'm sure of our mutual commitment to roll our sleeves up and continue working toward the best outcomes possible for the people of the Caribbean. Desired economic and social advancements are most effectively accomplished through the power of partnerships." Mr. Isaac Solomon, CDB Vice President Operations, said the Caribbean's needs are extensive and the key to covering more ground is collaboration and cooperation between institutions that are facilitating the region's sustainable development agenda. We will see better results from alignment, and having had the discussions, we will now take action to move on from here. The release concluded that the CDB and the World Bank have enjoyed a long-standing partnership, with their most recent collaborations centered on bolstering public procurement in the Caribbean. I'm Andre Huey for SKN Newsline.
Earnings from citizenship by investment programs are not guaranteed and as such should be saved for a rainy day. So says Nigel Chalk, Acting Director of Western Hemisphere Department of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, in a recent media interaction with Caribbean journalists in Barbados. Andre Huey again of SKN Newsline has more.
Earnings from the citizenship by investment programs are not guaranteed and as such should be saved for a rainy day. So says Nigel Chalk, Acting Director of the Western Hemisphere Department of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, in a recent media interaction with Caribbean journalists in Barbados.
For some countries in the region, these are really important. They're really a large share of revenues, a large share of the funding of fiscal spending. So certainly these have to be managed well. I think the way we view these revenues is they should be viewed in a similar way to which countries view non-renewable resources. That they may not last forever, they may be fairly short-lived. So you better make sure that the resources that are coming in from those sources are well managed and are used productively. So and they're not recurrent revenues because you don't know from year to year whether how much will come in, and so you should make sure that you smooth the revenues. You don't spend a lot when the revenues are high and then cut back spending when the revenues are low, and that you save some of those resources for the future, because we know the region's subject to natural disasters. So you're going to need some resources if you get hit by a natural disaster. And this sort of revenue is a good case to say, well, it's could be temporary, it's lumpy, it's large. So put it in a savings fund, keep it there so that when times turn tough, that you have some resources to draw upon.
The Citizenship by Investment program is one of the major income earners for the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, at one point forming some 40% of government revenue. Andre Huey, SKN Newsline.
St. Kitts and Nevis Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew disclosed to the media recently that he has received a forensic report on the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis, which he described as troubling. Glenn Bart of SKN Newsline reports.
The Prime Minister was speaking with representatives of the news media when he made the disclosure. No details were given except his expressed concern that the report was not favorable. When SK Newsline asked if the report spoke to criminal conduct within the bank, the Prime Minister would not confirm or deny.
In my capacity as the Minister of Finance, I have received an independent forensic audit report about the management of the Development Bank. And I would say that it is indeed troubling. And more of that will come out as we go along.
No indications have been given as to how soon the details of the report will be made public. Glenn Bart reporting for SK Newsline.
In other news, one man is in police custody in connection with the death threats to Prime Minister Philip Davis of the Bahamas. More in this short ZNS news item.
Police are questioning a 58-year-old man of Jamaica Road in connection with death threats made against Prime Minister the Honorable Philip Davis last Friday. Officers reportedly arrested the man yesterday. Investigations into the matter continue.
Cuban and Venezuelan citizens are reportedly losing their life savings to fraudulent asylum travel companies as they try to gain access to the United States.
The asylum travel industry have reportedly become rife with fraud since President Joe Biden initiated a parole program that accepts a capped number of migrants from Cuba, Haiti, and Venezuela. The program allows the admission of a maximum of 30,000 individuals from each of the designated countries each year, granting them the right to work in the country for a period of 2 years. However, fake companies are capitalizing on the legal requirement for asylum seekers to have a U.S.-based sponsor and are stealing thousands of dollars from vulnerable individuals by offering fake travel packages online. The companies are offering packages with MAPS mobilization plans and purported sponsors for hefty fees. Many of these packages are even advertised on international websites and social media platforms. U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services claims it is working to alert prospective asylum seekers from overseas about online fraudsters seeking money. Unfortunately, many migrants seeking assistance are not familiar with the U.S. government's websites and resources and fall prey to being contacted by scams directly.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
London's Privy Council on Thursday, February 9th, handed down its judgment on the appeal centered around attorneys at law having to report suspicious activities in relation to their clients to the relevant authorities in Jamaica. Nakisha Aliman reports for CVM Live.
Because it's not unconstitutional. That's the reason for the United Kingdom Privy Council's ruling in relation to the section of the Proceeds of Crime Act, which places a duty on attorneys to report suspicious activities regarding their clients to the relevant authority. Minister of Finance, Dr. Nigel Clark, says the decision represents the firm commitment and resolve of the government of Jamaica to bring its anti-money laundering regime into compliance with international standards, adding the decision is a game changer in Jamaica's efforts to ensure that the financial system is not abused to launder the proceeds of criminal activity.
The Privy Council was unanimous in their verdict that, and I quote, "The regime does not breach attorneys or their clients' constitutional rights. It follows that the order of the full court, that is the Supreme Court, should be restored."
Having regard to the ruling of the Privy Council, Jamaica will now move with expediency to ensure that attorneys at law fulfill their obligations under the Act as part of the designated non-financial businesses and professions framework.
With the matter of attorneys being under the framework now settled, Jamaica would have satisfied the international standards of bringing all designated non-financial businesses and professions under Jamaica's anti-money laundering framework.
Minister Clark says this decision enables the General Legal Counsel to resume its role of monitoring compliance by attorneys.
And as the first step, with support from Jamaica's AML Prime Contact Secretariat at the Bank of Jamaica, to resensitize attorneys, particularly with regard to the suspicious transaction reporting regime.
The Privy Council heard the arguments on November 29 and 30, 2022, and the minister applauds their expeditious ruling. Nasika Aliman reporting for CVM Live.
First report on the investigations into the once missing, now reappeared file by retired Justice Stanley John will be ready by the end of March. John is the lead investigator, and on Saturday morning he gave a public update on the case. He promised to be fearless but fair, as the team investigates the circumstances that led to the state being ordered to pay $20 million to 9 men formerly accused of the kidnapping and murder of Vindra Naipal Kulman. TV6's reporter Cindy Raghubatika Singh tells us more.
Please know that this investigation which I lead is interested in one thing and one thing only. That is to say, uncovering and reporting within our terms of reference the truth about how the default judgment came to be entered and damages awarded against the state.
2 days after being appointed to lead a 2-member team to investigate how $20 million in damages could have been awarded against the state to 9 men formerly accused of the kidnapping and murder of central businesswoman Vindra Naipal Kulman, retired Justice Stanley John says they hit the ground running and promised a preliminary report will be ready by the end of March.
Given the gravity of it, we shall aim to present our first exhaustive report to the Honorable Attorney General no later than the 31st of March 2023. We say, let the chips fall where they may.
During a public address on Saturday morning, he outlined their 9 terms of reference, which includes the following.
To inquire into and establish whether there has been any dereliction of duty, violation of any law, conflict of interest, and or breach of trust on the part of any minister, member of the Civil Law Department, or any other person employed at the Office of the Attorney General and the Ministry of Legal Affairs in the management and conduct of this matter.
Recommendations, he says, will then be made based on its findings.
Any facts, circumstances, or evidence which, in the opinion of the investigative team, may give rise to, show, or establish commission of any disciplinary offense by any officer in the judicial and legal service relating to the management and conduct of this matter. To report in writing to the Director of Public Prosecutions any facts, circumstances, or evidence which, in the opinion of the investigative team, may give rise to, show, or establish the commission of any criminal or fraudulent act contrary to the laws of Trinidad and Tobago.
While he said the country was justifiably appalled and outraged over the ruling, he asked citizens to withhold judgment until the investigation is complete. The team has been instructed to produce a report on 3 of the terms of reference within 60 days from their establishment on February 5th and a final report with recommendations within 6 months' time. And while he did not take questions from the media on Saturday, he assured it will be done at a later date.
The investigation team must be allowed to gather information and deliberate on its findings before addressing the many questions that the public, through the media, must have. That interrogation would be best supported by relevant information. I therefore commit to fielding these questions at the appropriate time in the process.
Cindy Raghubatika Singh, TV6 News.
Hubbard's is once again innovating the way you shop with its new online store, providing 24-hour shopping convenience. You can shop now for appliances, hardware, houseware, building material, and more. Free delivery island-wide. Start shopping now at hubbardsHardware.gd. Safe, convenient, reliable.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.